My name is Vorth-Ka, and I have lived for 300 cycles among the stars. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 12 different species, seen wars that scorched entire systems, and observed the delicate dance of galactic politics. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I witnessed on Station Omega-7 that day. You see, humans had been part of the Galactic Council for exactly 47 standard rotations. 47! That is barely a blink in cosmic terms. Most species take at least 200 rotations just to figure out which end of a plasma rifle to hold. Yet, here they were, strutting around like they owned the galaxy, talking about their democratic values and human rights. Ha! Rights. As if the universe cared about rights. I remember the first time I saw one of them. Small, pink, squishy things with these tiny little appendages they called fingers. No claws, no natural armor, no venom sacs, no electromagnetic fields. Nothing. They could not even change colors to blend with their surroundings. Pathetic, really. The Croxian Empire representatives would snicker whenever humans entered the council chambers. The Zephyrians would literally turn their backs, which in their culture is the equivalent of saying, "You are not worth the energy it takes to acknowledge your existence." Even the peaceful Melloran Federation, bless their 6 hearts, would shake their heads in what I can only describe as embarrassed pity. How did such a weak species even make it to space? That was the running joke in the diplomatic quarters. The answer, according to most of us, was pure dumb luck. But I am getting ahead of myself. Just one thing before we begin. YouTube tells me 94.3% of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free. It really supports the channel, and you'll get more amazing HFY sci-fi stories delivered straight to you. Don't miss out. Let me tell you about Maya Reeves. Maya was the human representative on Station Omega-7, which served as a neutral trading post in the Vortex sector. She stood maybe 1.6 meters tall, had brown fur on her head that she kept tied back, and these strange blue optical organs that seemed to absorb everything around them. She weighed perhaps 60 kilograms soaking wet, which by galactic standards made her roughly as intimidating as a newborn fluffball from Kepler-9. The other species on the station treated her like a mascot. "Oh, look at the cute little human," they would say. "Can she do tricks?" The Grak-Tho traders would pat her head like she was some kind of pet. The Nexari merchants would offer her candy and speak to her in high-pitched voices typically reserved for younglings. And Maya? Maya just smiled. That infuriating human smile that never seemed to waver, no matter how condescending the treatment became. "Do not take it personally," I told her one day, as we stood in the observation deck watching ships dock and depart. "They simply do not understand your species yet." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, Vorth-Ka," she said. "I think they understand us perfectly. They just do not know it yet." Cryptic human nonsense, I thought at the time. They were always saying things like that. Mysterious little phrases that sounded profound but meant absolutely nothing. It was probably why they had lasted this long in galactic politics. Confusion as a survival strategy. The incident happened during the Festival of 7 Moons, when traders from across the sector gathered on Omega-7 to exchange goods and gossip. The station was packed beyond capacity, with beings of every imaginable shape and size crowding the corridors and markets. That is when the Ravagers showed up. Now let me explain something about Ravagers. These are not your typical space pirates or raiders. No, no, no. Ravagers are something far worse. They are what happens when evolution takes a wrong turn, gets lost, and then decides to make everyone else suffer for the mistake. Standing 3 meters tall on legs like tree trunks, covered in natural armor plating that could deflect most energy weapons, equipped with 4 arms ending in claws that could slice through durasteel, and possessing a jaw that could crack open a shuttle's hull. Ravagers were the bogeymen that parents across the galaxy used to frighten their children into good behavior. This particular specimen called himself Grak-Tho the Bone Crusher, which honestly was probably the most creative name any Ravager had ever come up with. Most of them just went by variations of Grar or Grox, followed by whatever body part they enjoyed breaking most. Grak-Tho arrived on a stolen Nexari freighter, blasted his way through the docking bay doors, and immediately started making demands. "I claim this station by right of conquest," he roared in that bone-chilling Ravager dialect that sounded like grinding metal mixed with dying screams. "All beings will submit to Grak-Tho, or Grak-Tho will make decorations from their bones." The station security forces, consisting of 6 well-trained Zephyrian guards, took one look at the 3-meter monster and immediately found pressing business elsewhere. Cannot blame them, really. Ravagers had been known to eat entire security teams as appetizers. Panic spread through the markets like wildfire. Beings scattered in every direction, abandoning their wares and trampling each other in their haste to reach the escape pods. The lucky ones made it to their ships and broke orbit before Grak-Tho could seal the docking bays. But not everyone could run. Station personnel, some traders who were too far from the docks, and unfortunately, the diplomatic corps, including myself, found ourselves trapped in the central hub as Grak-Tho began his reign of terror. He started small, as these monsters typically do, smashing vendor stalls, terrorizing younglings, demanding tribute from anyone who looked like they might have valuables. Standard Ravager behavior, really. Utterly predictable. What was not predictable was how the various species reacted. The mighty Croxian warriors, with their legendary battle prowess and honor codes, suddenly remembered urgent meetings on the other side of the station. The Zephyrians, masters of energy manipulation who could theoretically fry a Ravager's nervous system from 50 meters away, developed mysterious malfunctions in their organic circuitry. Even the Garathi, who were basically walking tanks with attitude problems, decided that discretion was the better part of not being torn limb from limb. And then there was Maya. She stood there in the middle of the chaos, watching Grak-Tho destroy a Melloran's fruit stand with the same calm expression she wore during budget meetings. Not running, not hiding, not even looking particularly concerned. Just watching human female. Grak-Tho bellowed when he noticed her. "You dare to look upon Grak-Tho without proper fear? Grak-Tho will crush your tiny bones and use them to pick his teeth." Maya tilted her head slightly, like she was considering his threat from multiple angles. "You know," she said conversationally, "that is really not very hygienic. Have you considered dental floss instead?" Dead silence. I mean that literally. Every being in the immediate area stopped breathing. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made sounds when they dropped in vacuum, which they do not. But you understand the metaphor. Grak-Tho blinked his 6 eyes in sequence, clearly processing whether he had heard correctly. "You mock Grak-Tho?" "Oh, not at all," Maya replied cheerfully. "I am just trying to help you maintain good oral health. Bone splinters can cause all sorts of gum problems, gingivitis, plaque buildup, the occasional mouth infection that makes your breath smell like rotting garbage. Though honestly," she wrinkled her nose, "that ship might have already sailed." The Ravager's roar of rage could probably be heard 3 decks away. He charged toward Maya with all the subtlety of a meteor impact, 4 massive arms raised to crush this impudent little creature into paste. Maya did not run. Maya did not even move. She just stood there, hands at her sides, watching 3 meters of armored death thundering toward her like she was observing an interesting weather pattern. At the last possible second, just as Grak-Tho's claws were about to separate her head from her shoulders, Maya did something that defied every law of physics, biology, and common sense that I thought I understood. She stepped aside. Not rolled, not dove, not threw herself desperately out of the way. She took one simple step to the left, like she was avoiding a puddle on the sidewalk. Grak-Tho, committed to his charge and possessing all the stopping power of a runaway cargo hauler, slammed face first into the reinforced polymer wall behind where Maya had been standing. The impact was so violent it shook the entire deck plating. Maya looked down at the temporarily stunned Ravager with the same expression most beings reserve for studying interesting insects. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "for someone who calls himself the Bone Crusher, you really should work on your spatial awareness. Maybe take a physics class. Learn about momentum, trajectory, that sort of thing." Grak-Tho shook his massive head, sending fragments of wall material cascading to the floor, and slowly turned to face her. His eyes had gone from their normal yellow to a deep crimson, which in Ravager physiology indicated either extreme rage or severe indigestion. Given the circumstances, I was betting on rage. "Impossible," he snarled. "Grak-Tho is fastest warrior in 17 systems. No puny creature can avoid Grak-Tho." Maya shrugged. "I do not know about puny. I prefer fun-sized. And you are right about the speed thing. Very impressive. Really committed to that whole straight-line approach. Unfortunately, straight lines are predictable. Predictable is easy to avoid." This time, Grak-Tho tried a different strategy. Instead of charging blindly, he attempted to corner Maya against the market stalls, using his 4 arms to block potential escape routes while advancing slowly. It was actually a reasonably intelligent tactic by Ravager standards. Maya waited until he was close enough that his hot, sulphurous breath was fogging up her optical organs, then did something that made my brain hurt to watch. She went under him. Not around, not over, but literally underneath the massive creature, sliding between his legs like she was made of liquid. By the time Grak-Tho realized what had happened, Maya was behind him, examining his armored carapace with the focused attention of a scientist studying a particularly interesting specimen. She murmured, tapping one of his armor plates with her knuckle. "Impressive natural protection. Probably effective against most energy weapons. But you know what? This plating has joints. And joints have weak spots." She pressed her finger against a gap where his shoulder armor connected to his torso armor. Grak-Tho screamed. Not a roar of rage or challenge, but an actual, genuine scream of pain. He spun around, swinging wildly with all 4 arms, but Maya was already somewhere else, having somehow relocated to his blind spot in the time it took him to register the discomfort. "The Nexari traders were right," she said, from her new position near his left flank. "You really do have a lot of nerve clusters in those joints. Fascinating evolutionary adaptation, actually. Probably helps with coordination and proprioception. Unfortunately, it also makes you incredibly vulnerable to pressure point manipulation," she demonstrated by pressing against another joint. Grak-Tho collapsed to one knee, his left arm going completely limp. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger as word spread through the station. Beings were peering around corners, peeking out of doorways, even watching from the upper walkways. Everyone wanted to see the impossible. A human fighting a Ravager. More accurately, everyone wanted to see a human getting torn apart by a Ravager because that was the only possible outcome anyone could envision. Except the outcome kept not happening. Instead, Maya continued her casual deconstruction of one of the galaxy's most feared predators. She moved around Grak-Tho like she was performing some kind of elaborate dance, touching pressure points, exploiting weaknesses, and providing what sounded disturbingly like an educational commentary throughout the process. "See, the thing about natural armor," she explained to her increasingly bewildered audience, "is that it evolves to protect against specific threats, energy weapons, physical impacts, environmental hazards. But evolution is reactive, not predictive. It cannot account for threats that do not exist yet." She pressed against a cluster of nerve endings near Grak-Tho's spine. His right arm joined his left in temporary paralysis. "Humans," Maya continued, now moving to his other side while the Ravager swayed on his remaining good leg, "are what you might call an evolutionary wild card. We did not develop natural weapons or armor or energy projection. Instead, we developed something arguably more dangerous." Grak-Tho made one last desperate attempt to grab her, lunging forward with his still functional arms. Maya caught his wrist, not blocked, not deflected, caught. Her small, soft human hands wrapped around a limb that could have crushed Duraplast, and Grak-Tho stopped moving entirely. "We developed the ability to learn," she said simply. Then she did something with her grip, some subtle twist of leverage, and applied force that made Grak-Tho's eyes roll back in his head. The 3-meter killing machine toppled backward and hit the deck plating with a sound like a cargo container being dropped from orbit. Maya released his wrist and stepped back, brushing dust from her uniform. "And once we learn something," she added, looking down at the unconscious Ravager, "we get very, very good at it." The silence that followed was the kind of absolute quiet that occurs when an entire room full of beings simultaneously question everything they thought they knew about the universe. Maya looked around at the crowd of stunned faces, smiled that infuriating human smile, and said, "So, who wants to help me tie this guy up before he wakes up? I have some zip ties in my quarters, but we are probably going to need something stronger." That, my friends, was when I realized that maybe, just maybe, we had been seriously underestimating the humans. But that realization was nothing compared to what happened next. Still gives me nightmares. Good nightmares, if such a thing exists. Word of Maya's victory spread through Station Omega-7 faster than a quantum transmission. Within 1 standard hour, every being on the station knew that a human had single-handedly defeated Grak-Tho the Bone Crusher without firing a single shot, deploying any weapons, or even breaking what appeared to be a mild sweat. The reactions were varied. The Croxian delegation immediately requested an emergency meeting with Maya. These were the same beings who had been calling humans barely evolved primates just days earlier. Now they wanted to discuss mutual defense treaties and strategic partnerships. The hypocrisy was so thick you could have cut it with a plasma blade. The Zephyrians went into what they called contemplative analysis mode, which basically meant they stood perfectly still for hours while their organic computers tried to process how their combat algorithms had failed so spectacularly. I found 3 of them in Corridor 7, motionless as statues, occasionally emitting small puffs of confused bioluminescence. The Garathi response was typically direct. Their trade representative, a 2-meter-tall walking mountain named Krex-Vul, approached Maya at the station cantina and said, "Human Maya, Krex-Vul wishes to purchase your combat techniques. Name your price." Maya looked up from her cup of that horrible brown liquid humans called coffee and smiled. Sorry, Grak-Tho, but those techniques are not for sale. They are freely available to anyone willing to put in the effort to learn them. Learn? Grak-Tho's massive brow ridges furrowed in confusion. Grak-Tho does not understand. Combat ability is genetic. Either you are born strong or you are not. Well, Maya said, taking another sip of her toxic beverage, that is where you are wrong. She gestured to an empty chair, which groaned ominously under Grak-Tho's weight as he sat down. Tell me, what makes a warrior strong? Muscle mass, bone density, natural weapons, speed, armor plating. Grak-Tho counted off on his thick fingers. All things determined by genetics and evolutionary adaptation. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Those are certainly advantages. But what good are muscles without knowing how to use them effectively? What good is speed without understanding timing? What good is armor without recognizing its weaknesses? She leaned forward, and I noticed that several other beings had quietly moved closer to hear this conversation. Grak-Tho had every physical advantage over me. He was stronger, faster, better armed, and better armored. By your definition, he should have crushed me in seconds. Yes, Grak-Tho agreed emphatically. This is exactly what confuses Grak-Tho. How did you defeat superior opponent? Maya's smile turned slightly predatory. I studied him. In the 3 minutes between when he announced his presence and when we fought, I observed his movement patterns, analyzed his attack strategies, identified his weaknesses, and formulated a response plan. The silence around our table was absolute. Every being within earshot had stopped their own conversations to listen. You studied him? This came from Zithkal, a Nexari merchant who had been eavesdropping from the next table over. During combat? Before combat, Maya corrected. Humans have a saying, know your enemy. But we take it further than most species realize. We do not just learn about our enemies. We learn about everything. Combat techniques, pressure points, anatomy, psychology, behavioral patterns, tactical analysis, strategic thinking. She paused to take another sip of coffee, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she had just described what most species would consider an impossible multidisciplinary mastery. The thing is, she continued, humans are not particularly specialized. We are not the strongest, fastest, smartest, or most adaptable species individually. But we are very, very good at learning from others and combining different types of knowledge into new solutions. Grak-Tho scratched his massive head with one clawed finger. But where did you learn to fight Ravagers? Humans have only been in space for a few decades, Maya laughed. I have never fought a Ravager before today, but I have studied 17 different combat disciplines from my home world, analyzed the anatomical data of 43 different species, cross-referenced weakness patterns in natural armor configurations, and practiced adaptive response techniques for unknown opponents. She gestured around the cantina. Every species here contributed to my victory today, whether they realize it or not. The Zephyrians taught me about nerve cluster mapping. The Melaran medical texts showed me pressure point locations. The Croxian military manuals provided tactical analysis frameworks. Even Ravager physiology data was available in the Galactic databases. The implications of what she was saying began to sink in around the room. Beings started glancing at each other with expressions ranging from amazement to concern to outright fear. You mean, Zithkal said slowly, that humans study everything? Pretty much, Maya confirmed cheerfully. We are curious by nature. When we encounter something new, our first instinct is to figure out how it works, why it works, and how we can use that knowledge. That was when Commander Vex-Thor of the Kroxian Imperial Guard made what I now realize was a critical error in judgment. "Impossible," he declared, rising from his table with the kind of dramatic flourish that Kroxians loved. "One lucky victory does not prove anything. Ravagers are mindless brutes. Any competent warrior could defeat one with proper preparation." Maya turned to look at him with that same calm, analytical expression she had worn while facing Grak-Tho. "You think so?" "I know so. Kroxian warriors are bred for combat. We train from birth. We are genetically engineered for warfare. No soft little human could match a true warrior in fair combat." The cantina went dead quiet again. This was clearly a challenge, and everyone knew it. Maya stood up slowly, her movements precise and controlled. "Commander Vex-Thor, are you challenging me to a duel?" Vex-Thor's chest swelled with pride. If the human has courage to face real warrior, then yes. Vex-Thor challenges puny human to honorable combat. Several beings started backing away from their tables. Kroxian honor duels were legendary for their brutality, and Vex-Thor was a decorated veteran who had supposedly never lost a single combat engagement. Maya nodded politely. "I accept. What are your preferred terms?" "Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no armor. Combat ends when one opponent yields or cannot continue." "Agreed. Shall we use the cargo bay? More room to move around." 20 minutes later, half the station had crowded into Cargo Bay 3 to watch what everyone assumed would be the shortest duel in galactic history. Kroxian warriors were 2-meter-tall killing machines with redundant organ systems, reinforced skeletal structures, and reflexes enhanced by military-grade cybernetic implants. Maya looked like she was preparing for a light exercise session. They faced each other across the cleared floor space, Vex-Thor in full ceremonial battle stance, Maya standing relaxed with her hands at her sides. "Begin," announced the impromptu referee, a Melaran station official who looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Vex-Thor launched himself forward with a textbook Kroxian battle cry, moving faster than most beings could track. Maya waited. At the last possible moment, she shifted her weight, redirected Vex-Thor's momentum, and somehow used his own charge to flip him completely over her shoulder. The decorated Kroxian warrior hit the deck plating hard enough to dent it. Maya had not even moved her feet from their original position. Vex-Thor rolled to his feet, shook his head clear, and attacked again. This time he tried a more cautious approach, using his reach advantage and superior strength to force Maya into a grappling match. Maya slipped past his guard like smoke, touched something near his elbow, and Vex-Thor's right arm went completely numb. "Interesting," she said conversationally, as the Kroxian stared at his useless limb in shock. "Your cybernetic enhancements create additional neural pathways, but they also create new vulnerabilities. The interface points are particularly sensitive to precise electromagnetic disruption." She demonstrated by touching another spot near his shoulder joint. Vex-Thor's left arm joined his right in temporary paralysis. "How?" he gasped, staggering backward. "Kroxian enhancements are military-grade, impossible to disrupt without specialized equipment." Maya held up her hand, and for the first time, I noticed something that had escaped everyone's attention during her fight with Grak-Tho. Her fingers were covered with barely visible metallic threads, so fine they looked like jewelry rather than technology. "Microcircuitry," she explained, "generates targeted electromagnetic pulses, completely harmless to organic tissue, but very effective against cybernetic interfaces. I designed them myself based on Zephyrian bioelectrical principles and Nexari miniaturization techniques. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. She had not just defeated Vex-Thor through combat skill. She had come prepared with technology specifically designed to counter his enhancements. You planned this?" Vex-Thor managed to say. Maya shrugged. "I planned for the possibility. When I accepted your challenge, I had about 15 minutes to analyze your likely combat approach, identify your technological augmentations, and prepare appropriate countermeasures. Fortunately, I had been working on anti-cybernetic systems as a hobby project." "Hobby project?" This came from me. I could not help myself. "Oh yes," Maya said brightly. "I find military technology fascinating. The applications for civilian use are incredible. Medical devices, construction equipment, transportation systems. You can learn so much by studying how different species approach the same basic problems." She looked around the stunned crowd with that same innocent smile. "Actually, that gives me an idea. Would anyone like to participate in a little demonstration? I have been working on some other projects that might interest you." What followed was 2 hours of the most educational terror I have ever experienced. Maya proceeded to demonstrate technologies and techniques based on the knowledge and abilities of every major species in the galactic community. Anti-gravity boots, inspired by Meloran levitation organs. Energy deflection shields, based on Zephyrian bioelectric fields. Strength amplification exoskeletons modeled after Grak-Tho muscle structure. Adaptive camouflage systems reverse-engineered from shifter skin cells. Each demonstration was accompanied by a cheerful explanation of how she had studied the relevant species, identified the underlying principles, and developed human-compatible applications. By the time she finished, every being in that cargo bay was looking at her with the same expression you might wear while watching a natural disaster approach your homeworld. Awe mixed with terror, and a growing realization that maybe, just maybe, inviting humanity into galactic civilization had been a serious miscalculation. "The wonderful thing about being human," Maya concluded, putting away her various gadgets and technological marvels, "is that we are not locked into any single evolutionary path. We can study everyone, learn from everyone, and adapt the best ideas from everyone." She paused, and her smile took on a slightly sharper edge. "We are very good at adapting." Commander Vex-Thor, who had regained the use of his arms but apparently lost the ability to form coherent sentences, managed to stammer, What do humans want from the galaxy?" Maya considered the question seriously. "The same thing we have always wanted. To learn, to grow, to explore, to make friends, and build communities, and solve interesting problems." She looked around the room, making eye contact with representatives from every species present. "The question is, what do you want from us?" That meeting ended with the most awkward silence in diplomatic history. Over the following days, as word of Maya's demonstrations spread throughout the sector, something unprecedented happened. Species that had been dismissing humanity for decades suddenly began requesting formal cultural exchanges. Not conquest or subjugation or resource extraction, but genuine partnerships based on mutual learning and cooperation. The Croxians wanted to study human tactical flexibility. The Zephyrians were fascinated by human technological adaptation. The Nexari saw potential for incredible collaborative engineering projects. Even the Grak-Tho began approaching humans with something resembling respect. As for me, I requested immediate reassignment to the human diplomatic mission, because I realized something that day in Cargo Bay 3, watching Maya casually revolutionize our understanding of what was possible. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was not some lucky accident that had stumbled into galactic civilization. Humanity was the most terrifying thing the galaxy had ever encountered. Not because they were violent or aggressive or conquering, but because they were infinitely adaptable, endlessly curious, and utterly relentless in their pursuit of knowledge and improvement. They did not just want to join galactic civilization. They wanted to understand it, improve it, and make it better for everyone. And that, my friends, was when I realized that the age of humanity had only just begun. Maya Reeves returned to her diplomatic duties the next day, as if nothing unusual had happened. She filed her reports, attended her meetings, and continued to smile that infuriating human smile at everyone she encountered. But now, when other species looked at her, they saw something different. They saw the future. And for the first time in galactic history, nobody was quite sure whether to be excited or terrified about what that future might hold. Personally, I was betting on both.